Well, all eyes are focused on what's developing between Russia and Ukraine. We wanted to take a deeper dive into why this region of the world is experiencing such tension and discord. Joining us is Dr. Max Kovalov, Instructor of International Studies and Bennett Director of the Mroz Global Leadership Institute at the College of Charleston. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So maybe you can help us better understand the history between these two nations.
Yes, so both countries were members of, or they have quite a bit of history together. So both countries claim to have its roots from the 10th, 11th century, from the so-called Kiev Rus, the principality, which was a set of principalities, and Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus claim their roots from this principality. So there were some shared points of shared history. There are some points when history is not shared. So when we're trying to understand whether these people are the same people and whether Ukraine is a real state, because this is what's at stake here, these are different people, these are different countries, they have different histories. The fact that Ukraine was connected to Russia, was anchored to Russia over the last 300 to 400 years doesn't necessarily mean that these are the same people.
They have shared historical roots. At any point in time, was there peace between these nations?
Well, for 70 years during the Soviet existence, Russia considered Ukraine as a little brother. But then the two countries coexisted in this imperial or colonial relationship when Ukraine really dependent on Russia, but then Russia also dependent on Ukraine.
That's interesting.
For provision of agricultural resources. It was a breadbasket of the USSR and of the Russian Empire.
Oh, very interesting. Now, you say, though, that the people who lived there hundreds of years ago are not necessarily the same people who live there today. So where do the people who live there today come from?
Well, I mean, the modern Ukrainian state has its origins in 1991. In 91, Ukraine and Russia declared their independence from the USSR, and so that's where Ukraine has its origins as its independent state. So the Russian government is describing Ukraine as sort of this territory that doesn't necessarily exist. It's not a natural territory.
So what is creating everything to come to a head at this point in our history? Why is there so much tension and discord today?
There are a couple of reasons that we can think about. We can think about deeper reasons and more proximate reasons. The current tensions go back to 2013, 2014. Ukraine experienced a set of protests which were a response to a policy decision by then Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych not to sign an association agreement with the European Union. And this policy decision caused a series of protests which got out of hand. They got radicalized, they got violence, they were peaceful, and then they got violence with police repressions. And so Ukrainians changed this narrative of protest away from the policy decision to join the European project, to protests against the repressive power of the state and against centralization of power.
I see.
And then Russia annexed the Ukrainian territory, annexed the Crimean Peninsula, and started supporting troops, separatist troops in eastern part of the country. And that was 2014. Fast forward to 2022, 21, Russia started accumulating troops on the Ukrainian border.
And with just about 30 seconds left, Dr. Kovalov, if you can tell us what the impact to the United States is with the tension that's happening in that part of the world.
Well, I think that the impact for the U.S., I can think about practical and more intangible consequences for the U.S., for American citizens, for us. On the practical level, we already see the spike in fuel prices. The Europeans are going to see the spike in natural gas prices because the Europeans depend on Russia's natural gas supplies. We probably will see this in prices at the pump. But then also there's an intangible element, and that's the element of values and democracy. Ukraine has been building democratic institutions. Ukraine is a functioning democracy, not perfect, but it's a functioning democracy. And this is what Russia tries to destroy. And so this is where our values actually align with Ukraine. We want to support Ukraine values, Ukrainian democratic institutions and reforms.
As do many other countries. Dr. Kovalov, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're back after this.